You have a calculator? You need one? Alright, so we're going to start at the very basics today because I don't think many of you turned in the extra credit factoring homework that I gave you guys, which is what would have prepared you for this lesson. So let's start from the very beginning of how we how we divide or add or multiply or do anything. How do we do this when our denominators are not the same? So we already did multiplying and dividing, now we're doing adding and subtracting. Do we see here how these denominators are not the same? Okay, they are not the same, so I cannot just add straight across top and bottom. That's not how that works. What you need to have is a least common denominator. So here's how we get a least common denominator. I need a number that is in common with both numbers. So let's write our multiples. The multiples of 5 are what? What's at the 5? 10, 15, 20, so on. What about for 2? What comes next?
206, 8, 10.
Alright, do we see that I already have a match? What's my least common denominator? What's in common for both lines here?
10.
The 10. Okay, so that is going to be my least common denominator. Okay. Let's look at this one. Alright, so we're looking at our main denominator, right? We started with 5. My new common denominator is 10. What am I going to multiply to 5 to get my new denominator of 10? 2. The key here is what you do to the bottom, you also have to do to the top. So we're also going to multiply the top times 2. So what's 2 times 3? Good. Alright, for my second fraction, I have 2, and I need to get the 10. I'm going to multiply to what? 5. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. And 1 times 5 is? Now I can add straight across because I have like denominators. So what's 6 plus 5? 11. Good. This is not really what we're doing. This is not part of our lesson, but you have to understand how we do this so you can understand when it gets harder. Because right now, this is like what you did in elementary school. Okay? We're going to add factors into it. Alright, let's look at number 2. My denominators are not the same. I need to get them to be the same. So let's figure out what they have in common. If I list my factors for 8, I have 8, 16, 24, so forth. Let's do 12. We have 12, 24, I can stop there, 36. So I know that my least common factor is going to be 24. Alright, now look back at your fractions. Look at the first one. 7 over 8. My denominator is 8. What am I going to multiply to get my new denominator of 24? 3. Okay, that's how I did that. So whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. What's 3 times 7? 21. Okay. And then look at my second fraction. I have 12 and I want to go to 24. So I'm going to multiply what? What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So 5 times 2 is 10. What do I get when I subtract 24 minus 10?
You get
11. Good. Alright, my answer is 11 over 24. Okay? So now let's go a little bit further into our lesson. It says now find the least common denominator. We're not adding, subtracting, we're not doing any of that. All I'm doing is I'm trying to find my LCD. I'm going to highlight both denominators. Okay, what I like to do is I like to label my LCD. You'll see me do that all day long. I label my LCD because now I know what I'm actually working with. What's the denominator of my first fraction? Thank you. X minus 4. What's the denominator of my second fraction? 2 times x plus 4. What we're doing here to find my least common denominator is I need to find something that's in common. From top to bottom, from our first fraction to our second, do you see anything that is completely in common? Same exact thing? No. Okay? That x minus 4 and x plus 4 are not the same. So, I don't have any pairs. I'm going to circle everything individually. What we are doing is we're trying to get our pairs together and everything else stands alone. Okay? So let's look. I'm going to bring everything down. My 2 will be in my LCD. X minus 4 and x plus 4. This is my LCD based on those denominators. Okay? Let's look at number 4. I have 3 divided by x minus 2 and 2x divided by x squared plus x minus 6. Before we get started, I need my denominators to always be in factored form. Well, x minus 2 is in factored form, right? Look at the next one, x squared plus x minus 6. I can factor that. But I need 2 numbers that multiply to give me negative 6, and that adds to give me positive 1. What do we get here? 2 times 3, what gets my
I
negative?
think 3. Wait, no, sorry, the 2.
The 2. Because negative 2 plus 3 will give me positive 1. So I'm going to cross out that second denominator, and I'm going to write in my factors. X minus 2, x plus 3. Okay, now that I have factors for my denominator, I can find my least common denominator. The first fraction I have x minus 2. The second fraction I have x minus 2, x plus 3. Do you see anything in common from top to bottom?
X minus 2.
The x minus 2 is in common, so I'm going to bring that straight down to be x minus 2. Anything that stands alone just comes by itself. So, it's x plus 3. I'm going to put in my answer as well. That is a part of my LCD. I can't just leave it because it's by itself. Put it in your answer. Alright, number 5. Look at my denominators. Alright. I need to factor my first denominator, so I need 2 numbers that multiply to give me 9 and adds to give me 6. What are my options? 3 and 3, right? Everything is going to be positive. So I can cancel that out, and I'm going to write x plus 3, x plus 3. Alright, for my second, equation, or my second polynomial, I have x squared minus 9. We have to realize at this point that this is dose. So x minus 3, x plus 3. No other way around it. You just have to know that if I have 2 terms and a minus sign and 2 perfect squares, it's dose. So, for my LCD, the denominator of my first fraction is x plus 3, x plus 3. And on the second, I have x minus 3, x plus 3. What could be my LCD from top to bottom? Do I have any pairs?
Yep.
Which one?
X plus 3, X minus 3.
Alright, this looks like that should be a minus, right? X minus 3.
X,
Alright.
wait, do you have x plus 3, do you have like 1, oh, wait.
Alright, that's one pair. Everything that stands alone will come out by itself. That's by itself, x plus 3, as well as this guy, x minus 3. You can only bring out pairs together. Any questions with that? All right, let's fill this in. Here are my rules. First, you want to find the least common denominator. Step 2 says you want to multiply each fraction by the missing factors of the common denominator. And then you want to write the problem as a simplified fraction. And then you add or subtract the numerator and then simplify the fraction even further if you can. All right, any questions here? All right, let's move on. Number 5. Do we notice here at number 5, my denominators are the exact same? So we don't really have to write them twice. My LCD is going to be what? What? X plus 3, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't hear you. Alright. So, my least common denominator is automatically going to be x plus 3. That's like if I give you guys 2/5 plus 1/5, you're going to automatically just add it straight across, right? And get 3/5. That's what we're doing here. Let's look at the top. I have 2x plus 6. Let's take a look at this 2x plus 6 for a second. Can I take a GCF in 2x plus 6? What is it? 2. So when we divide, we get x plus 3, right? So my answer here is 2 times x plus 3 divided by x plus 3. Is there anything here that I can cancel out? You can get rid of your x plus 3's. So what's left over? Just 2. So what we had to do here was we had our LCD, which was x plus 3. And then I added my numerator, which was 2x plus 6. But I have to try to simplify that as much as I can. So that's why I took out a GCF of 2. And I was left with x plus 3, which canceled out. That one's an easy one. Look at number 2 or number 6. Do I have the same denominator? Yeah, so my LCD is just going to be 2x, right? What I want you to get into a habit of doing is when you see a minus sign, change it. So this minus I'm going to change to a plus. The key here is that you have to take the opposite sign of the next number. So I had a plus sign, I made it into, I had negative, made it to a plus. You'll understand why we do that later, but just get into a habit of doing it. So on top, I'm left with 3x plus negative 4x. What's 3x plus, or either 3x minus 4x? What's that?
Oh,
No, this is like terms. What's 3 minus 4?
oh,
Negative something. Negative 1. And we have our x divided by 2x. Can I cancel anything out? I can't?
Yes.
X can go. So we're left with negative 1 over 2.
You not have a negative?
In a fraction? Absolutely. The only time we don't want a negative is if we start with a negative letter with like a polynomial, like negative x squared or something. That we don't want. Any questions on number 6? Alright, look at number 7. This one's a little different. I have 2x as a denominator and 3x squared. So off to the side, I'm going to find my LCD. In my first fraction, if they're not the same, I have 2x. Well, 2x is really just 2 times x, right? Break it up. Because we just have a number and a variable, go ahead and break it up. And then number 2, I have 3x squared. Break that up too. So 3 times x times x. That's 3x squared. I'm just breaking it up so I can see it better. So do I have any pairs from 1 to 2? No pairs? The x. See that, Jeffrey?
Oh, yeah.
From top to bottom, we're looking for all pairs. So that x just comes right out. Everything else is by itself, right? So I'm bringing my 2 out because that's by itself. The 3 out, that's by itself. And the last x is by itself. If I multiply this all together, what's 2 times 3 times x times x?
6.
6?
x
Square.
X squared, good. That was step 1. Alright, I want you guys to pay attention to this part completely. Do you guys see my first fraction here? I have a denominator of 2x, right? That's the old denominator. The new denominator is 6x squared. If I want to multiply to make them equal, what do I need to multiply to the 2x? 3. What else? I'm going from x to x squared. So we're going to multiply by 3x. So now we have 6x squared. Whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So 3x times 5 gives me 15x. On the other side, I have 3x squared, and I'm trying to get to 6x squared. What am I missing? Just times 2. Because my x squareds are fine. So what's 2 times 2? 4. Do I have a GCF with that 15x plus 4? I can't do anything else with it. So that is my answer. 15x plus 4 divided by 6x squared. Any questions here? All right, number 8. Before we start, let's make this 5 into a fraction. We just make it 5 over 1. Okay, so my LCD of the first fraction is what? 6x, which I can do 6 times x. Give myself some more room. So 6 times x, so they split it up. My second fraction, my denominator is just 1. Do I have any pairs from top to bottom? No. Everything is by itself. The 6, the x, and the 1. Let's multiply them all together, and what do we get? 6x. Do you guys notice this minus sign?
Yeah.
Let's change it. Plus, minus. You can't just make it plus and leave it there. You have to do 2 things. So my GCF on the bottom is 6x. And on top, do you guys see how for my original I had 6x, right? My new denominator is 6x. Did anything change?
No.
No. So should my 7 change? No. It just stays the same. Alright, then look at the second fraction. I started with 1 and I need to end up with 6x. So I'm going to multiply by what? 6x. Whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top.
Having 30,
What is negative 5 times 6x?
negative 30x.
Negative 30x. We cannot cancel anything out from top to bottom because that minus sign limits us. Everything on top is bounded together. Any questions on this one? All right, let's take a 2-minute break. Go to the restroom if you need to. All right, let's look at number 9. We see here that I have 2 completely different factors, right? So my LCD, my denominator of the first fraction is x minus 3. And of the second fraction is x plus 2. Do I have any pairs? Nope. So that means that they each, on their own, join my LCD. All right. Let's see what we're missing. Do we see how they give us x minus 3 in the original? And I also have x minus 3 in my new. I don't have x plus 2, so that's what I'm going to multiply because that's what I'm missing. And what I do to the bottom, I also do to the top. So for the numerator, let's distribute. What's 3 times x? 3x. And what's 3 times 2? Okay, so that's one side of it. Let's look at the other. They give us x plus 2. I have x plus 2 in my new denominator. I do not have x minus 3, so that's what I'm going to keep writing plus. Okay, I'm going to multiply that side by x minus 3. Do you see how now each fraction will now match my new denominator? Does that make sense? Yes or no? Okay. Now let's distribute. 5 times x and 5 times 3. negative 3, negative 15. Let's simplify my numerator. What is 3x plus 5x? 8x. We always take the sign before. And I have positive 6 minus 15.
9.
You should get negative 9.
Negative 9.
And on the bottom, I have x minus 3 times x plus 2. That is my final answer. Any questions there? Good. Number 10. I cannot start out doing my LCD because this is not factored all the way down. Do we see that this is dose, right? So what's gonna go inside my parentheses? Huh?
X plus 2.
X plus 2 and x minus 2. We can cross out that x squared minus 4. Don't need it anymore. Alright, my second denominator is just fine. So in the corner, I write my LCD. My denominator of the first fraction is x plus 2 times x minus 2. And of the second fraction, it is x plus 2. All right, let's take a look at this. From top to bottom, do I have any matches?
X plus 2, X plus 2.
Here are my matches right here. You have x plus 2. This x minus 2 stands alone, so I can't forget it. I also add it into my LCD. So my new LCD is going to be x plus 2, x minus 2. What do I do with this minus sign up here at the top? Let's change it to positive, and let's change my 3 to a negative. Opposite, opposite. Now, take a look at this first fraction. Is anything changing from my new LCD? Am I missing anything? No, I have x plus 2, x minus 2. That's what's in my new denominator. So my 4x will stay the same. That 4x stays the same. Now take a look at the other one. I have x plus 2. What am I missing?
X minus 2.
X minus 2. So I'm going to multiply the bottom and the top to x minus 2. This is why I said to change your signs, because if not, you're going to forget that this negative here is a negative 3 that you have to distribute. If you just change it from the beginning, then you're not confused. So what is negative 3 times x? And it was negative 3 times negative 2. Positive signs, right? Alright. Let's simplify what's on top. 4x minus 3x. Huh? 4x minus 3x. 1x. Or you can just write x. That 6 is by itself, no like terms. And then on the bottom I have x plus 2. X minus 2. That is your answer. Alright, let's look at number 11. I know immediately I don't want to keep x squared minus 12x plus 32. I need to do the factor chart, my t-chart for two numbers that multiply to give me 32, and that will add to give me negative 12. So 8 and 4, what needs my negative?
Let's see. 9 plus 4.
Well, I need to have a positive 32, so I know I need two negatives. Negative 8 minus 4 gives me negative 12, right? So that one works. So I'm going to cross out that guy, and I'm going to just rewrite x minus 8, x minus 4. Alright, let's do my LCD on the side. My denominator of the first fraction was x minus 8 times x minus 4. And the denominator of the second fraction was just x minus 8. Do I have matching factors from top to bottom?
Yes.
Yes. So that comes down as a group. Anything without a partner also comes down. So I'm left with x minus 8, x minus 4. Look at this first fraction. Am I missing anything in my old denominator? No. I have x minus 8, and I have x minus 4. So therefore, I'm going to leave this as it is, because I did not change anything on my denominator. Let's just rewrite x squared plus x minus 3. On the other side, I have x minus 8. What am I missing?
X minus 4.
The x minus 4. Okay? So on top, I have 3x times x, which is 3x squared. And then 3x times negative 4, which is negative 12x. Now let's combine like terms for my numerator. We have x squared plus 3x, so that is 4x squared. Plain x minus 12x is negative 11x. And my negative 3 stays. If you really wanted to, you could swing the numerator and factor it out. You don't have to. You can leave it just like that. Alright, I want you guys to do 12, 13, 14, and then we're going to check our answers. Alright, here you go for number 12. I had to factor my second denominator, so I got x minus 2x plus 1. The things that were matching from top to bottom were the x plus 1. And then I had to ask myself what I was missing. Did you guys change that plus to a minus?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay, so if you did that, actually it's okay for this problem. It doesn't matter for this one. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Okay. So my first fraction was mixing the x minus 2. I distributed that and I got 2x minus 4. Then I have negative x minus 2, or you could have had plus negative x, same thing. You still get 1x minus 6 over x minus 2, x plus 1.
So the answer doesn't matter if So it doesn't matter. It matters plus negative.
In this case, it does not matter. No, either answer would have worked. All right, look at number 13. On 13, I had to get factors for both denominators. So I got x minus 4, x plus 3. And then for 3x minus 12, I put it right here in the middle. Take out your GCF, you get 3 times x minus 4. I added both of these over here to my LCD. My x minus 4 is for pairs. Everything else just came out by itself. Okay. Look at number 14. Any questions on this homework? So the important part, sorry, this is classwork. The important part here is that make sure that before you find your LCD, you factor it all the way down as far as it can go, and then you circle your pairs. Eric, you with me? Okay, you circle your pairs. Everything else will come by itself. Like in this one, you can't pair up the x and the x, okay, because that first x minus 1 is combined. Any other questions? All right, your homework is homework E.